Hey everyone, it's Rose from the Painted Toad, and I have the final edition of the Paint With Me for the summer, and it is Sunset Sunflowers. So we're going to jump right in. For this, we're going to actually start with, if you have this is like a cobalt blue that I have, or you could use like a cerulean blue, or not a super duper dark blue. And then a little bit of violet. So like a shade of blue and some violet. And I'm going to do these two together. And I think you know what I'm going to have you do. I've been masking this flower, and I feel like that's kind of causing some of the issues with this one. I'm not really sure. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to sketch in the flower and then work around it. So I'm going to try this a little bit different than what I'm doing. So if you have a pencil, we're just going to create kind of like a round shape here, just like that. And it'll be okay if we paint over this later, that won't be a big deal. But it'll just help so we don't have to do the masking part. It's really humid here in Michigan right now. And so every time I do the masking, the paint takes forever to dry. So I'm just kind of creating petals around this. And this is our big focal point, this big flower here. You just kind of do parentheses here. Those kind of sketches. So it should be kind of big. And then these other little ones, we'll just, I'm not worried about those ones. We'll just do that. And we're going to do this big old sunflower right here. Kind of like that. And it may not be exactly like that. Once we're done painting it, we'll find out. So it just kind of shows us where we want it to start. We are going to take a flat brush. If I want a little smaller here, we're going to do a flat brush. And I'm going to dip it. I like to dip it in both blue and purple. And then we're going to come across like this. So you can kind of decide here if you want it to be more blue, you can always add a little more blue. If you like the look of the purple, we can add a little bit of the purple. Well, just like this. And then for this part, I'm going to go between these petals as best as I can. That way we don't have to do, like with this one I painted all the way across, but I want to save us some time so we don't have to paint the flower white first. And if you don't get this perfect around your petals, don't worry about that. We'll paint over it, so it's no big deal if it's not perfect. And then as you bring it down, start to transition to a little bit of purple here, maybe a little bit more purple towards the bottom. Because then what I want to do is I want to bring in some of that magenta. So we're going to bring that in down towards the bottom. A little purple between there. So this one's probably going to look a little different from the one I have over on the other side, just because I want to try something different. I just wasn't happy with the clouds and how they were working out. So that's what you do as a painter. You try different things. You don't like the way it turns out the first or the second time, try it a different way. That's what I'm doing with you. Okay, once you get down here, pull out a little magenta. I have some light magenta, or you could do any shade of pink really if you want. And that you shouldn't have to really clean your brush here, because magenta will mix very nicely with the purple and the blue. So we're not going to totally mix it, but I'm not cleaning my brush either. So I'm just going to kind of bring this down in here and do a little layer of magenta to kind of mix a little bit here. Yeah, sometimes it's easier to go all the way across instead of around the petals, but it'll work. I'm just kind of mixing that with my purple a little bit so I have a nice transition between the purple and the magenta. And then the very last color we're going to do down here is some green, but before we get to the green, I'm going to add a touch of yellow, and I am going to rinse my brush because I don't want the blue and purple mixing with the yellow. So I'm just going to take some really bright yellow now. We don't need very much yellow at all. You can even switch brushes too if you want. And I'm just going to mix in a little yellow down here over the magenta a tad. So it'll kind of make a little bit of an oranginess, an orange hue. And then we'll get kind of some bright yellow down in here. You can kind of mix that like that. I'm taking a little more magenta too to turn this slightly more orange. There we go. So see how mine looks kind of orangey there? All right, once you get that done, then you can rinse, and we're going to do green down here. This is going to be the field of sunflowers. So the last little bit at the bottom will be some green. And I did definitely do this one a little bit different than the other one because I brought the green up a lot higher on this one, but this one I'm kind of putting it lower just because I wanted more blue behind the sunflower itself. Once you're ready, take a little green and then finish off the bottom. I'm using a dark green. Any shade of green you want is fine. I kind of start at the bottom, and then once I get close to that edge, if it's still wet, be careful if it's orange. If it's yellow, it doesn't matter so much, but sometimes if it's got a little orange in it, it'll start to turn brown on you. So if you need to leave a little gap between your green and your orangey part, just until the orange dries, you can do that. Or just be super careful and don't blend it as you're getting close to that edge. Like I just kind of go straight across here. I'm not going to mix it back and forth. I'll just use my flat brush here to get a nice clean green edge. There. Yeah, if you mix it too much, then the orange will mix with your green and then you're ending up with brown. Which we are going to use brown, but not there. Now get some dark umber brown on a flat brush. So for the center, just kind of paint that little circle in. Doesn't have to be perfect. We'll do petals out of it later. So I was just kind of testing with the Q-tip some little swirly patterns. So I think what we're going to do is let's kind of start up towards the top. It should be mostly dry up there. And I'm thinking the pink and the white, or maybe the pink and the white and the purple. So I'm going to take my Q-tip, I'm going to dip it in some white, I'm going to dip it in some pink, and then let's try that first. It might mix a little bit with your background, but that should be okay. And we're just going to kind of do little poofy clouds here, just kind of swirling. Play around with it and have fun with it. Just kind of swirl your paint with your Q-tip and see what fun little cloud structures you can make with that. This one's real pink. You can almost do, I'm kind of doing this, like kind of just sweeping it and doing little arcs with it. That's kind of a cool. So have fun with it. See what you can come up with. That's the fun part of painting. It doesn't have to be done a certain way. Just kind of experiment and see what you can get it to look like just doing different things. I'm going to do some little puffies. So I'm just using pink and white right now. I am going to try and add a little blue as we get down farther. Maybe to change it up, because I did kind of like how this lighter blue looked. It looked kind of pretty. You could put more pink in if you want more pink in there. I think I'm actually liking that sky better than any other sky that I did so far. See? The more you do something, might discover something else that you didn't know would work. And then I'd like to do a little, I like this purple that I did. It was actually it was pink and blue and white. So I didn't actually use purple, I used pink and blue and white. And it made like kind of a lavender. I'm going to try that down here so that maybe they're a little more lavender down at the bottom. Just to see something a little different. And then as I come down here, I was going to do this one, which was pink and yellow and white. You get kind of that peachy look. So white, pink, and yellow. And I just keep dipping all three on my Q-tip and just seeing what it does. Just kind of mixing it and letting it do its own thing. I'm just adding a little bit more white here to get the clouds to stand out from my orangey background a tad. Okay, what I want to do now is I'm going to put in I'm just going to use white, and I have a little small skinny liner brush. So when you're ready, if you're still working on your sky, finish your sky. But if you're ready to move on, we're going to add, we're going to just mask some little flowers down here, and I'm just going to do little white circles where I'm going to have some small sunflowers. Like this one's going to be big and close to us, but then these ones are kind of smaller and they are farther away from us, so they're kind of in the field from a distance. So we're not going to make them real big, and I'm just doing dots right now, and then we'll add the petals in a second. If you want to make the ones towards the bottom bigger dots because they're closer, you can do that, and then the ones that are farther are going to be smaller dots. Or then once you have a bunch of those little dots around here, we are going to add petals. You can just use your brush and just kind of make little petals around them. Nothing fancy, these are small and it's just background details, so it's not like you don't have to be super fancy and try to get perfect petals or anything. What I am going to do though is kind of clean up these edges a little and just take my white and just kind of clean up some of the edges where the background kind of cut into my petals. So you can do that too. A little bit of masking to just touch up those petals. That way when we paint them yellow, they'll have nice clean edges. You can paint the whole petal white if you want. I'm just kind of more trying to get the colored edges to brighten up here a little bit so that when I do the yellow, we can see it. And then I'm going to also take just a tad bit of white because this has a stem, and I'm going to just kind of pull some of that white down just to decide where my stem is. So it's got a stalk here. We are going to paint that green too, but at least this gives us a solid location to paint it. So for the leaves, I'm using some white. First, I'm going to worry about these tiny little leaves in the background. So if you want to put some little stems on these back here, just do some green and white and kind of swipe it. It doesn't have to show up perfectly. It'll just kind of make it look interesting back there. And then I just take and create some little leaf shapes with the white and the green. The white's important because it's going to help it pop off the background. Otherwise, it'll just blend in with that dark green we already did. So I do white and green on there and just create some little leaf shapes. You can do them first on your sunflowers that you have painted there. Ooh, that one's kind of a dark one. And the leaves don't have to be perfect because this is far away, so it's just little details. It's not, you know, a major thing here. It just kind of makes the background look interesting. But the focal point, once this is finished, these will show up down here, but the real focus is going to be on that big sunflower. So don't stress yourself out trying to get perfect leaves down here because nobody's going to even notice them. And then I just like to take the extra paint on my brush still and just kind of dab it and add a little texture in here in the background. So you just kind of do little dabs to add some texture back there. So it looks like there's, more leaves and vegetation, but it doesn't have to be super specific. Just kind of some blobbiness. And for our big one here, we can add some big leaves on it. So I'm going to show you it first in white just to map it out. And I'm going to paint right over some of the stuff. Even though it's wet, it's all going to be green and white anyway. So if you paint right over some of those things that you just did, that's fine. And then just bring in some green. There's a nice healthy leaf. You can do a little green and white on the stem. Paint that in. I got a couple of leaves coming up there, and then I like to add a touch of yellow on this bigger one just to make it pop and stand out from the other ones in the background. So you just throw a little yellow in there even while it's still wet. Throw a little yellow on the stem. And that makes it kind of stand out a tad. You could put a little, maybe some touches of yellow in here just to brighten it up, since it's on my brush anyways. So for the petals, you're gonna need some yellow. So I have like a bright yellow. I also have this kind of yellow orange, or you could use regular orange. I also have, I'm gonna use a touch of red. I'm going to take my flat brush here and we're going to load it up with some color. So I'm going to put some yellow on there. I am going to put some of this orangey yellow on there. And then I'm going to take just a teeny itsy bit of the red. Not too much, because red's going to go a long way. So see, there's only like a little tiny bit. And what you can do with the flat brush or the angled brush is you can take from the center, let me try to do this so you can see what I'm doing, and pull it up like this and kind of turn your brush and then come the other way and pull it up. And what it will do is it'll leave these nice little streaks in there so it'll look like a petal. So that was yellow, kind of like a medium yellow and orange, and then just a very little bit of the red. If you do too much red, well, you could do more red. Like if you want your sunflower to be more reddish or a darker orange, you could add more red. Kind of up to you how you want that to look. But I don't blend it too much here. All I'm doing is just kind of pulling it up, turning my brush, and then pull it up this way and turn your brush. Get that one a little bit more on that edge. And it'll leave those nice streaky looking sunflowery petals. Oop, that got a lot of red on there, but you know what? I think it'll be okay. So if that happens, see how red that one is? It could just be a shadow, or you can just go back, take a little yellow over and pull the yellow over the top to tone it down a little. Or you can wait till it dries and then, try to paint over it again. I'll leave these ones down at this end, maybe a little bit darker. That'll be interesting anyways. Let that dry, and you can kind of work now on your little guys and just get your little brush. And you could do that, like you can put a couple colors on there, or you can just kind of make them, I'm probably just going to do the yellow and the orange because they're very small, so it's hard to get a streaky effect when they're that small. And you wouldn't be able to see it from that far away anyways. So just kind of go over them and make little blobs over the white petals you already made. And it'll be nice because these are going to pop out now. They won't get hidden with that green background behind them, wanting to show through. So the last little bit we're going to do is up here. We're going to do the centers. We're going to have some fun with texture. Now you could do the centers lots of different ways. You could use a Q-tip, you could use a toothpick, you could use a liner brush or a round brush. I'm going to start with a round brush first. Just like a little bit bigger one than my liner brush. It's like maybe this size. And first I'm going to get into my brown and just do some textured blobs here. So I'm just kind of dabbing it. So the burnt sienna is just kind of like a reddish brown. I'm going to try this in the center. So the dark brown I'm using is the raw umber, and then the burnt sienna is going to be the reddish brown. A little more of the raw umber because I'm out. And I'm going to keep using my round brush, and I'm just going to do some dabs. Or you could try this, like I said, you could try this with a toothpick, or you could try it with a Q-tip. And I'm just kind of doing little blobby dabs here, just to give it texture so it looks like there's sunflower seeds in there. You could use the end of your paintbrush too. Like let's say you wanted it to be, like the dots to be a little bit more distinct. You can do the end of your paintbrush and make some real distinct dots in there. Or a toothpick. I'm also going to take a tad bit of white to brighten up a little bit of it. I'm trying this with the end of my paintbrush first. Doesn't seem to be picking up though. What is going on with my white? I'm just taking a little bit of white in there. And the white really makes it pop. I usually put a little bit of white in the center as well. You could even put a tad of green in there if you wanted that to stand out and look a little bit different. So once you're happy with the texture in the center, it's just doing little blobs and stuff, kind of having fun with it. Then I'm going to go in and, well, this one's kind of fat. Let me get my smaller brush. I'll go in now and do the centers on my other ones that are back here. Just paint in the little circles. You want, you can add a little more color in there. Like you could do a light brown and a dark brown and kind of swirl it to see what you get. Here's a little trick. If your stem and your leaves are kind of not standing out from the background because they're so green, you can take a little bit of your like your umber brown or a little bit of red and just add it in there, and it'll actually make it show up better, which is kind of cool. I'm taking a little white too and add a highlight to the tops of the leaves. For the last little detail, I'm just adding some white dots just to add a little texture, a little highlight in the centers of each sunflower. I hope you enjoy this painting, and for more painting tutorials, make sure you like and subscribe to The Painted Toad. Thanks so much for watching.